Philadelphia is not wasting any time reshaping the direction of this team. And if you've been paying attention over the last few days, you already know there is a lot to unpack. The energy around the organization feels different. There is movement behind the scenes, adjustments being made, and decisions that could define the next chapter of this roster. And it starts with the coaching staff. One of the biggest additions is Gerard Johnson, the former quarterbacks coach of the Houston Texans, who now joins the Philadelphia Eagles staff. His arrival says a lot about the direction this offense might be heading. There was plenty of noise around his departure in Houston, especially with the expectations placed on a young quarterback there. But coaching turnover in this league does not always tell the full story. Sometimes it is about fit, sometimes about philosophy, and sometimes it is simply about organizational reset. What matters now is how he fits in Philadelphia. When you look at the pattern of hires, it becomes clear the Eagles are stacking minds that understand timing-based concepts, rhythm passing, and the structure of a West Coast system. There is a deliberate shift happening. The franchise appears committed to refining the offensive identity, blending what worked before with a more controlled, precision-based approach. That does not mean abandoning what has made this team explosive, but it does suggest an evolution. The front office would not be making these additions without a clear vision in place. At the same time, there is strong belief internally that the real splash this offseason might not come from an outside signing, but from within. The priority seems to be locking up cornerstone pieces on the defensive line. Players like Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter represent the kind of young foundation that championship teams are built around. Securing extensions for them not only reinforces the long-term core, it also provides flexibility with the salary cap. When you manage those contracts properly, you create room to maneuver. And maneuvering is something this front office has never been afraid to do. But as much as stability matters, there are also difficult conversations taking place. The situation surrounding Nakobe Dean has quietly become one of the more intriguing storylines. When he is on the field, his intensity is undeniable. He plays downhill, he diagnoses quickly, and he brings the edge you want from a linebacker in today's league. The issue has never been effort or talent. It has been availability. Injuries have interrupted his rhythm since arriving in Philadelphia. And in a league that moves as fast as this one, consistency is everything. Now, the possibility of a division rival showing serious interest adds another layer. The Dallas Cowboys are reportedly monitoring the situation closely, and that alone is enough to stir emotions among Eagles fans. Nobody wants to see a talented defender cross that line. Rivalries in this division are personal. They are intense. And when a player who understands your system, your terminology, and your tendencies ends up wearing different colors twice a year, it changes the dynamic. There is also the financial reality. Contracts in professional football are business decisions first. If another organization presents a stronger offer, especially in a state without income tax, that factors into the equation. Loyalty is important, but careers are short. Agents will always present the numbers, and players have to think about their long-term security. That does not make it easier for fans to accept, but it is the nature of the league. While that debate simmers, a much louder conversation has taken center stage, and it revolves around A.J. Brown. Rumors have started to circulate that he may be open to a trade, not because of a lack of success, not because the team has failed to compete. In fact, it is the opposite. Since arriving in Philadelphia, he has helped push this franchise to the highest stage. He has been instrumental in deep playoff runs and championship contention. His presence alone changes defensive game plans. So why would a player of that caliber consider wanting out? It might come down to role and recognition. A.J. Brown is a dominant receiver. He thrives on volume, on rhythm, on being the focal point. In an offense that spreads the ball and emphasizes balance, there are weeks where his target count does not reflect his talent. That can be frustrating for any elite competitor. Wide receivers, especially at the top tier, measure themselves not just by wins, but by production. They want all-pro honors. They want Pro Bowl nods. They want to lead the league in yards and touchdowns. Playing in an offense that also features Devonta Smith and a strong ground attack means sacrifices are inevitable. The Eagles have often prioritized efficiency over individual statistics. That approach wins games, but it can limit personal milestones. If A.J. Brown believes his legacy depends on putting up historic numbers, then a philosophical gap could emerge. It does not have to be personal. It does not have to be dramatic. Sometimes it is simply about ambition. The front office reportedly values him at a premium, potentially even seeking a first-round return in any discussion. That tells you they are not eager to move him. They understand his importance. You do not casually replace a receiver who forces defenses into single high coverage and open space for everyone else. His gravity on the field has contributed to the success of the running game and the development of the passing attack. Defenses cannot ignore him, and that has ripple effects across the formation. Still, tension between star players and coaching staffs is not unheard of in this league. When personalities are strong and expectations are high, friction can develop. The key question becomes whether that friction fuels growth or creates separation. Championships do not automatically erase dissatisfaction. Sometimes reaching the summit only sharpens the desire for more individual control. As all of this unfolds, the draft looms in the background as another pivotal moment. The scouting process has intensified, and performances at the combine have already shifted conversations. Defensive backs, in particular, have drawn attention. Speed, explosiveness, and versatility are premium traits in today's NFL, and this class has several intriguing prospects who could reshape the secondary from day one. Evaluating them requires balancing measurable testing with on-field instincts. 40-yard dash times matter, but awareness and anticipation often separate good from great. There is one safety prospect who has dramatically elevated his stock with a dominant combine showing. His athletic profile jumps off the page, and when you combine that with solid film, you start imagining how he would fit in Philadelphia's scheme. A defense that values range and closing speed in the deep middle could benefit from a player who can cover ground effortlessly while still delivering physicality in the box. If the draft board falls in a favorable way, the temptation to secure that kind of talent could be overwhelming. And that is where everything connects. Coaching adjustments, contract negotiations, trade rumors, draft evaluations. It is all part of the same larger strategy. The Eagles are not operating in isolation on any one move. Every decision affects the next. Every contract signed influences who can be retained. Every draft pick shapes future cap flexibility. This is roster construction at its most complex, and the coming weeks will reveal whether Philadelphia doubles down on its current core or pivots toward a slightly different identity while still chasing the same ultimate goal. If you step back and look at the bigger picture, this offseason feels less like a routine adjustment and more like a pressure point for the entire organization. The expectations in Philadelphia are no longer about simply competing for the division. After multiple deep playoff pushes, the standard has been raised to championship or bust. That kind of pressure changes how decisions are made. It changes how players view their roles. And it definitely changes how fans react to every rumor that surfaces. The conversation around A.J. Brown continues to hover because of what he represents. He is not just another wide receiver. He is one of the emotional engines of this team. His physicality after the catch, the way he attacks contested balls, the way he brings swagger to the offense, all of that feeds into the identity the Eagles have built over the last few seasons. When you acquire a player like that, you are making a statement about who you want to be. Letting go of that kind of presence is not just a football decision. It is a cultural one. At the same time, there is an undeniable business component. If a team were to meet the reported asking price, you have to at least evaluate it. First-round selections carry long-term value, especially when you are balancing multiple extensions on the defensive side of the ball. The Eagles have always been aggressive, but they have also been calculated. They understand windows in the National Football League open and close quickly. Sometimes you extend the window by staying the course. Other times you extend it by reshuffling resources before decline sets in. There is also the question of fit with the offensive direction. If the shift toward a more structured West Coast approach becomes fully realized, it could emphasize timing and distribution over isolation and deep shots. That does not mean star receivers disappear, but it does mean targets may be spread with more precision. In that type of system, chemistry between quarterback and receiver becomes even more critical. Any friction, even minor, can feel magnified when the margin for error shrinks. That brings the focus back to leadership. Nick Sirianni has always preached connection and accountability. When a star player's goals start to diverge from the collective vision, the head coach has to manage that carefully. You cannot allow frustration to leak into the locker room, but you also cannot dismiss the ambitions of a player who has delivered in the biggest moments. The balance between empowering individuality and maintaining unity is one of the hardest aspects of coaching at this level. While that storyline dominates headlines, the defensive evolution might end up being just as significant. Locking in young interior linemen like Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter would solidify the trenches for years. Dominant defensive lines travel in January. They shorten games. They create turnovers. They protect vulnerable secondaries. If Philadelphia commits financially to that group, it signals a belief that championships are still built from the inside out. But reinforcing the defensive line only solves part of the puzzle. The back end must hold up as well, especially against the high-powered passing attacks emerging across the league. That is why the draft evaluation of safeties and defensive backs feels so crucial. A true center field presence changes everything. It allows defensive coordinators to disguise coverages, to bring pressure from creative angles, and to trust that someone can erase mistakes over the top. The prospect who turned heads at the combine did more than just run fast. His explosion numbers, his vertical leap, and his change of direction drills painted the picture of a player with elite traits. Athleticism alone does not guarantee success, but when it aligns with instincts and discipline on tape, it becomes hard to ignore. Scouts love upside, especially when the floor appears solid. For a team that has experienced both highs and lapses in the secondary, adding a dynamic safety could stabilize the unit. Imagine pairing that type of range with an aggressive front seven. Quarterbacks would have to hold the ball a split second longer, unsure whether the deep middle is truly open. That hesitation can be the difference between a completion and a turnover. In tight playoff games, those fractions of seconds define outcomes. Philadelphia has been close enough in recent seasons to understand how small the margins are. The Nakobe Dean situation also ties back into defensive identity. Linebacker play in today's league demands versatility. You need someone who can scrape downhill against the run and flip his hips in coverage without hesitation. When Dean is healthy, he flashes that ability. The concern has never been effort. It has been durability. Availability is a skill in professional football, and front offices must weigh potential against reliability. If a division rival truly pushes aggressively, it forces Philadelphia into a difficult decision. Do you match the offer and assume the injury risk, or do you pivot to a younger, potentially healthier option already on the roster? Developing in-house talent can be cost-effective, but it requires patience. In a city that expects immediate results, patience can feel like a luxury. And through all of this, the fan base remains intensely invested. Every report, every hint of movement, sparks debate. Some believe you never trade a proven star unless the return is overwhelming. Others argue that staying ahead of the curve is what separates sustained contenders from teams that fade after a brief peak. Both perspectives carry weight. The truth likely lies somewhere in the middle, shaped by conversations we will never hear inside the front office. FlyEaglesFly News family, smash subscribe and hit like. Your support keeps the freshest Philadelphia Eagles updates flying in. Drop your take in the comments, and let's talk birds. What began as whispers in league corridors has quickly escalated into one of the most talked-about storylines in football. Sources close to the situation suggest that a deal involving A.J. Brown is no longer a distant possibility, but something that has quietly crossed the finish line. While no formal statement has laid out every detail, the sense around the league is that the Philadelphia Eagles have pulled off a decisive turn in negotiations that few outside the building saw coming. Inside the Novacare complex, the mood is described as confident, almost defiant. Executives reportedly believe this was the right moment to act, even if the move risked sending shockwaves across locker rooms and front offices alike. Brown's name alone carries weight. He is not just a star receiver, but a symbol of modern offensive dominance, capable of reshaping game plans and forcing defenses to rethink everything they do. Landing or firmly securing such a player inevitably shifts the balance of power. Around the NFL, rival teams are said to be scrambling to interpret what this means. Some see it as a bold statement that the Eagles are doubling down on their identity, others as a calculated gamble with long-term implications. Agents, coaches, and players have reportedly been exchanging messages, all trying to read between the lines of a move that feels bigger than a single transaction. What fuels the speculation even more is the silence. No celebratory press tour, no exhaustive breakdown of numbers. Just a growing consensus that something major has been locked in, and that the ripple effects are only beginning. For fans, it feeds anticipation. For opponents, it breeds unease. And for the league as a whole, it reinforces the idea that when elite talent and ambition collide, the fallout is never quiet. That's a wrap from FlyEaglesFly News. If you want the fastest Eagles updates, subscribe, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Sound off in the comments. Let's talk birds.